Hello there, math students. I hope all of you are having a good day and enjoying this beautiful weather we've been having lately. Let's go ahead and get started with our math for today. Hopefully you have your notes. It should say 1.2 and look like this. And if you don't have access to a printer and don't have those notes printed, just grab yourself a clean sheet of paper and you can write down the answers on your paper, and that'll be great. So getting started, our I can statement for today. I can multiply and divide integers. There's that word again. As you remember, integers, those are the positive and negative whole numbers, including 0. So we have a little warm-up here. I want you to go ahead and pause this video and try to answer all the warm-up questions. So all the way through to this letter J question right here. Okay, go ahead and pause now. Did you pause? Okay, so hopefully everyone got it paused. You probably noticed these are questions that are basically a review from yesterday. So here are the answers. So negative, at least in math, is going to mean opposite. And then why is the absolute value of a number always positive? Because absolute value is distance, and distance is always positive. And then when we're finding these absolute values here in numbers C and D, let's see, absolute value of 14 is 14. And absolute value of negative 28 is just 28. We're just going to take those numbers and in absolute value, we're just going to make them positive. Over here, when you have the additive inverse, that's when you're just going to take the sign and change it. So the additive inverse of positive 7 is going to be negative 7. And our additive inverse of negative 10 is going to be positive 10. And what are the integers? Like we were just saying, the integers are the positive and negative numbers, including 0. Over here, what is the opposite of having $5? No, I said that wrong. What is the opposite of owing $5? That's having $5. And what is the opposite of negative 5? The opposite of negative 5 is positive 5. And the opposite of 9 is negative 9. So your opposites and your additive inverse, those are the same thing there. But the absolute value, that's where you always make it positive. Okay, how'd you do? Okay, good. Let's keep going. So we're going to skip a little bit of this here. We're not going to worry about this part right there. We're going to go right down here in this nice little rounded off box here. So here we're talking about our rules for multiplication. Before we start talking about these rules, has everyone heard of implied multiplication? That's when you have like two numbers right next to each other like this. Here, let me give you an example. Like if I had 5 in parentheses, and then you have 4 in parentheses, and there's nothing in between them. There's no plus, there's no minus, there's nothing. There's just the two numbers. That means you're going to multiply them together. So that's implied multiplication. Other ways we can write multiplication would be a dot, like this. 5.4. Or, and here's what you saw in elementary school when you first started doing multiplication with the little x. So those are our 3 ways to show multiplication: with implied multiplication, with the dot, or with the x. So going over here, you see we have these two things right next to each other. So this is like implied multiplication. What they're trying to say here is if you have a positive number times a positive number, what is the sign going to be on your answer? If you have a positive times a positive, you're going to get a positive. Now, if you have a positive number times a negative number, that is going to give you a negative number. If you flip those around and do the negative number times the positive number, it's going to be the same thing. It's still going to be a negative number. And then here at the bottom, if you have a negative number times a negative number, that is going to give you a positive number. So here's the way I like to think about this. If you have the same two signs, then it's going to be positive. So positive times positive equals positive, or negative times negative equals positive. So if you have two numbers and they're both the same sign, you're going to wind up with a positive number. Whereas if you have different signs, you're going to be getting a negative number. Your rules for division are completely the same. So if you have the same signs, like here and here, you're going to have a positive number. If you have different signs, like here and here, you are going to have a negative number. Now I know a lot of times we write division with a symbol like this, right? This is totally the same thing, it's just a different way of writing it, and you're going to be seeing this a lot. So this would be like this number divided by that number. It looks like a fraction. Okay, now going over here, let's just write it out in words a little bit. Using words, a positive times a positive is a positive. A positive times a negative is a negative. All right, flipping that around, a negative times a positive, still a negative. And a negative times a negative, you have the same thing there, negative, negative, so that's going to become positive. And the rules for division work exactly the same. That is so convenient. There we go. All right, let's move on to where it says example 2. Let's try out these rules. It says these should be done without a calculator, and that's really good advice. Let's not use a calculator because the calculator would figure out the signs for us. And where's the fun in that? We need to be memorizing them and learning how they work on our own. So even if your multiplication tables are a little rusty, I'd rather you risk getting the number wrong than use a calculator. Because if you use the calculator, we can just you're pushing buttons, you're not really thinking. But the main thing here is that you're getting the sign correct. So if you get the number wrong, don't stress about it. I want you to worry about getting the sign correct. Okay, so here we have our implied multiplication. 5 times negative 4. So you have one positive number, one negative number, which is kind of like this up here. So it looks like we are going to wind up with a negative answer here. So let's go ahead and write a negative there. And now thinking about those multiplication tables, 5 times 4, that's going to be 20. So 5 times negative 4 equals negative 20. Okay, let's go on to B. Again, we're going to be thinking about the signs first, and then we'll worry about the numbers. So 8 times 10, looks like we have a positive times a positive. And as we can see up here, that's going to give us a positive number. So I could write a plus here, but I don't really have to, do I? With a positive number, I could just leave it out. Let's go ahead and think about the numbers. 8 times 10 equals 80. So I could leave it like that. It looks a little better to take that plus off of there and just have it like this, though. So that's probably a little more standard. Okay, here we go. Negative 2 times 4. Now we have a negative times a positive, just like this one. Those are different signs, so as you know, we're going to get a negative answer. And then the 2 times the 4 is going to give us 8. Done. Here, more implied multiplication. 3 times negative 7. Again, we have different signs. So is it going to be positive or negative? Negative. Good. 3 times 7, 21. Nicely done. Okay, down here we have a little division, sometimes with the fraction bar and sometimes with the division sign, but it all means the same thing. So here we have a negative number divided by a negative number, kind of like this right here. So what's it going to give us? A positive number. I'm not going to write the plus sign here. I already know it's positive. So let's just divide now. 15 divided by 5, it's going to be 3. Okay. Negative number divided by a positive number. So this looks different with the division sign, but it's the same thing as this, a negative divided by a positive. So we know it's going to give us a negative. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So that final answer is negative 4. Okay, over here, 70 divided by 10. A positive divided by a positive is definitely a positive. So we could write the plus, but I'm just going to leave it out. 70 divided by 10 is 7. And one more here, 22 divided by negative 2. A positive divided by a negative gives a negative. And that 22 divided by 2 tells us 11. I didn't get that one circled. There we go. Okay. So just think over the summary here. I'm going to summarize it different than they have. So in summary, if you have 2 positives or 2 negatives, it's going to be positive. If you have one of each, it's going to be negative. Now let's look at this vocabulary down here. What does the word product mean in math? You remember that? It's kind of been a while, maybe not, I don't know. Product is the answer in multiplication. So that I'm just going to say multiplication. So like here when we did 5 times -4, -20 was the product there. Over here, quotient, what does quotient mean? That's the answer in division. So when we had -15 divided by -5, 3 was the quotient. Okay. I want you to just find another piece of paper or flip over to the back like I have done. I want to show you 2 more problems and then we're done with our notes. So what do we do when you have 3 numbers in a row instead of just like 2 numbers in the problems we've been doing? So let's take a look at this. -3 times 2 times -4. So I want you to just take this one step at a time. Pretend that -4 doesn't exist. Pretend you just have -3 times 2. Negative times a positive gives us a negative. 3 times 2 gives us 6. Okay, so basically you just took both of these and turned them into -6. Now let's finish it off by copying this down. Now we have -6 times -4. A negative times a negative equals a positive. And 6 times 4 equals 24. So you know your final answer is just going to be 24 there. So just break it down into 2 numbers at a time. Let's look at the next problem here. -2 times -5 times -2. Same idea here. I'm just going to get rid of that third one and we're going to combine these first. So if you have -2 times -5 multiplied together, a negative times a negative is going to be a positive, so I'm not going to write a sign there, I'm just going to leave it. And then 2 times 5 is going to be 10. And then let's bring this down here. 10 times -2. Positive times a negative, we know it's going to be a negative. And 10 times 2 is 20, so that's our final answer there. So that's how you deal with it when there's more than one. And if it was like 5 numbers multiplied together or 11 numbers multiplied together, you do the same thing. Just take 2 at a time. But you're not going to have anything more than 3 numbers on your homework assignment, which you are ready for now. So go ahead and continue to your assignment. Speaking of your assignment, let me show you really quick. Oh, wait, you do not need this page here. If you have it, you can get rid of it. I will put this on Canvas also, but on this first page, you can skip numbers 2, 6, 12, skip those, along with 16 and 20, skip those. And instead of those, it's like a trade. We're skipping 5 here, and we're adding these 5. So just the ones in the boxes. You're going to do number 9 and number 10. And you're also going to do those last 3 problems, 22, 23, 24. Okay, like I said, I'm going to write that down in Canvas too. I just wanted to show you real quick. Bye, guys.